Hello, this is Jane Hughes, and you are listening to the Chilled Parent Podcast, Episode 4.
To become a chilled parent that has time for yourself, feels fulfilled and full of energy, can still pursue your personal goals as well as being a present parent with a great relationship with your kids, there are 5 skills you need to master. In this podcast, I take you through each one and share with you information, tips, and real-life stories about how we can implement these in our daily lives as working parents, so you can finally step into the joy of parenthood without losing yourself.
Hi everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about creating space, okay? So this is the first step in that 5-step process I've been telling you about to create a better work-life balance. So in this episode, I'm going to talk about what creating space is and what it is not. So ways that people maybe get it confused, try to create space when they're actually not. So you can avoid those same pitfalls. I'm also going to talk about why it's so important and the impact that it has on your life when you don't create enough space for yourself and the impact it has on your life when you do. So hopefully by the end of this episode, you'll be very convinced that you need to go off and start creating more space for yourself, okay? And you'll know how to do it too. All right, so let's dig in. The first thing I want to talk about is what it is not. So when I say, how do you create space for yourself? Sometimes I'll hear things that people say, and they will say things like, well, I just need to make sure that I'm on top of everything. I need to make sure that I'm really organized. I need to get stuff done so that I can feel like I've got a clear mind, okay? So really what you're saying in that regard is, I'm going to create space for myself by going and doing all these jobs so that then I can relax. That's not creating space for yourself. That's actually giving yourself more work. Think about it. You're telling yourself that you can't relax until you have all these things done. So if you have a lot to do, you're not going to be giving yourself the chance to relax. And as a working mum, when do you not have a lot to do? We've always got a lot to do. And that's why this never works, because there's always something to fill that gap. Once you get organized and on top of stuff, something else will come along. So what you need to learn is how to create space for yourself when you have a huge to-do list, when you have a lot of stuff going on. That's when it's even more important to learn how to create this space for yourself, okay? So getting things off your to-do list or getting on top of things or getting organized, that's not creating space, okay? It's just giving yourself more to do. The other thing that I see is people think that it has to be this sort of grand gesture. Like I will hear clients say, like, I feel like I just need a few days to get my thoughts in order, or I just need a couple of weeks just to really relax. Or I have one client who will actually say, like, I just need 6 months. This is when you know it's getting really bad, when you feel like you need a really long period of time out of your own life. That's when you need to be creating this space for yourself now, every day, okay? That's a symptom of burnout, like feeling like you need a lot of time away from your own life to recover. That's a big flag that you're burnt out and doing too much. So if that's you, then you definitely need to be listening to the next few episodes, okay? But also just on a smaller scale, people think, oh, well, I need to go and get a massage or have a spa day, or they make it like this big thing, like it's more a kind of self-care thing, you know? I'm not saying that these things are bad. Like it's great to go and do those things and treat yourself, but that's not how we create space for ourselves. And when you feel like it has to be something that big, you're much less likely to go and do it. So that works against you thinking about it like that, because you're much less likely to make time for these things when you feel like it has to be like a full day activity or something that's going to take hours. Because as I said before, when do we have that amount of free time as working mums? Okay, so it's really not about that. I would say the ideal amount of time that you need to create space is anywhere between 1 minute and 30 minutes. I think anything less than 1 minute and you're not really doing it properly, but 1 minute is enough. Anything more than 30 minutes, and I think your mind is going to start to wander onto other things. You're going to start to lose focus. So this is something that can be done in very short periods of time throughout your day. And as I go further in the episode and explain what it actually is, this is going to make a bit more sense. The other thing that I think that people do is that they think of exercise as creating space. This one is a bit tricky. It's a bit nuanced. This can be creating space, but it also is not sometimes. So it depends on how you're going to exercise. If your version of exercising is going for a long walk to clear your head or going for a run to get your thoughts straight, yes, that is creating space and that would work. But when you're going to the gym, like maybe you're going to an exercise class that you need to focus on, or you're going to the gym with your friend, or you're going to go and lift some weights and put a podcast in, that's not necessarily creating space for yourself. And as I go through this episode, you'll see why and hopefully be able to better discern whether or not it is. But it's important that you know the difference and don't think you're creating space for yourself when you're not. I was asking one of my friends about this. I was like, what are the biggest things you see people do when they think they're creating space for themselves, but really they're not? And she said they start to shirk their responsibilities and just drop all the balls. I was like, oh yes, that's a really good one. The way I view that is when they detach. And again, I think this is a symptom of burnout, when you just completely detach from everything you have going on and you basically adopt the attitude of fuck it, I just can't do this. I just can't do anymore. And then they just start to detach and not do, what they want to do in a day really, or what they need to be doing. They don't take on their responsibilities. They just start dropping things. And that's not creating space for yourself. Again, that's detaching. So yeah, if you feel like you're headed towards that, again, that's a flag for burnout. So make sure you get some support with that. The last one is meditation. And you can or cannot meditate in a way that creates space for yourself. So if you are a bit more of a seasoned meditator and you're trying to create space for yourself by sitting down, meditating and watching your thoughts, then yes, that is creating space for yourself. But if you are someone who has maybe just got into meditation or thinks they want to create space by meditating and you're trying to switch off your thoughts, that's not creating space. That's not how you meditate. And I think this is a really common misconception. People think if they're going to meditate and they're going to meditate well, they have to switch off their thoughts. They have to clear their mind. And that's not the goal of meditation. And people get really frustrated. I see people God, I hate meditation. It's just impossible. How does anybody do it? But that's not what it is. Meditation is observing your thoughts. The goal is to actually watch your mind and see what you're thinking. And so if you sit down and give yourself some space and watch what you're thinking and you notice your thoughts, then yeah, that is creating space and that is meditating correctly. So meditation, it's just one that I wanted to bring up because I see people try it in the attempt to create space for themselves and then they go about it the wrong way. Okay, those are the things, the most common things that I see people do, which is not creating space for yourself, okay? So what is creating space? What do I actually mean by this? What I mean is taking some time, and as I said, it's a small amount of time, between 1 minute and 30 minutes. I think 30 minutes is pushing it to the edge of it really does not need to be that long. But you're going to take some time to just sit and think about how you feel and what you're thinking. So it's like a mini check-in. It's like a check-in with yourself throughout the day. How do I feel right now and what am I thinking right now? And why is this so important? Okay, you're going to see that as you do this, even if it's just a small amount of time that you spend a few times a day just checking in with yourself, you create a lot of awareness around your own thoughts and emotions. And that is the first step to creating change in any aspect. If you really want to create a life that feels really fulfilling, that you really love, you have to first understand what it is that you want and how you want to feel. And the first part of that is to look at, well, how do I feel now and what am I thinking about my current circumstances? So you really have to build time in your day to check in with how you think, what you feel, and that's going to create a lot of awareness for you. It also gives you perspective. Just taking that step back to just gather your thoughts gives you a lot of perspective on situations that can feel really heavy sometimes. For example, if there's something awkward happening at work or if one of your kids is having a meltdown, if you just give yourself a minute just to check in with yourself, what am I thinking? How am I feeling? It can create such perspective shift just in that small period of time that better enables you to deal with what's happening in front of you. So it's really, really important. I'm going to talk in the next episode about ways you can do this and what are my favorite ways to do it, what are my clients' favorite ways to do it, to just really get you thinking about it. But for now, just know it can be as simple as just taking a second to think, what am I thinking? How am I feeling? That can be it. It can be that simple. And then the other reason why it's so important is when you give yourself a bit of perspective, you create a lot of awareness. What that leads to is a lot of intention. Once you get to know yourself better and you understand how you feel the majority of the time in the day, you understand what you're thinking about certain circumstances, you're going to know yourself better a lot more, and that allows you to be more intentional about the way you want to live your life and how you want to spend your time. And I feel like this is so, so important, because when you don't live an intentional life, life just happens to you, and you can get 10 years down the line and be like, what has just happened? Like, I've just spent the last 10 years dealing with the same issues, the same problems. I feel the same way that I did 10 years ago. I don't feel like my life has really shifted. I've not grown. And that's a shame. That's a shame, especially like if you're somebody who loves your life now, then that's great. But I'm guessing you're not listening to this podcast if you really, really love your life and feel very calm and at peace most of the time. So you want to be intentional about your life and about your days, so that life doesn't just happen to you, so that you can start to create the experiences that you actually want in your life, and you don't get so sucked into the busyness of the day. And this is another reason I talked in the last couple of episodes about why modern day motherhood can be such a challenge, because we've got so much going on and so much to think about. And that really results in a lot of us just kind of going through our days every day, being so busy that we never once stop to think about what we want and how we feel and what we think. Like, think about that. It's crazy that we spend such little time thinking about how we actually feel and what we're thinking. But a lot of us will go weeks on end without thinking about it at all. And that's just the product of society these days, being so busy. And you have to be really intentional in creating that space for yourself so that this doesn't happen, so that life doesn't just happen to you, and that you really get that space in, get to know yourself a bit more, and then can get to work in creating the experiences you actually want to have, and design your days and live your life in a way that you want to actually live it. Okay, so I want you to think of your mind like a computer. Okay, so why is it so important that we do this? If you imagine that your mind is like a computer, and every time you have a new thought or a new concern or something else you're thinking about, it's like opening a new program on your computer. So think about all the different things you think about in a day. You're thinking about, like, what are the kids eating? What snacks shall I give them? Are they stimulated enough? What activities are they doing? Then you're thinking, like, what have I got to do for work? I need to reply to this email. I need to reply to that email. I've got this project due. Like, the amount of thoughts that we have as mothers in a day, it can be like, oh, I need to book the kids a dentist appointment, or they're due a checkup at the doctor's, or I need to book their flights for this, whatever. It's just endless, the amount of tasks that come into our mind. And I want you to imagine that if your mind was a computer, every time you have one of those thoughts, you're opening a new program on the computer. Now, what would happen if you did that on an actual physical computer? Like, you just open tab, open tab, open tab, open tab, open program. Eventually that computer is going to crash. It's just going to be like, nope, no more. It's just going to crash. And that's what your mind does. Your mind gets to the stage, either on a smaller level at the end of the day where you just feel so exhausted you can barely talk. You get home and your kids are asking you questions and you just can't focus on what they're saying because you've got so many tabs open in your mind. Or it gets to the point where you reach complete burnout and you just wake up every morning and you just feel like you can't do anything because you've just had so many tabs open for so long. What you're doing when you're not creating space for yourself is you're not giving that computer time to process. Your brain does work like a computer and it does need to process the thoughts that you have. And if you don't create space for that, you create this overwhelm where your brain will just be like, nope. And it just becomes very, very difficult for you to focus on anything else because your mind is still trying to catch up. It's still trying to process all the tabs that you've opened, okay? So that's why just creating a little bit of time to think, what am I thinking about right now? How am I feeling? And just letting your mind sort of wander is really important, and just observing those thoughts as they wander. So I want to talk about when you do this, what results or what symptoms do you create in your life? So how will you be feeling if you are someone who never creates space for yourself in this way? The biggest symptom that I see is that people's sleep really suffers. Like, people will often be like, I can't get to sleep at night because my mind is just racing. Or they'll say, I get to sleep fine, but I wake up in the middle of the night and I just can't stop thinking. that's because your mind is using that time to process. You've built in no processing time throughout the day. So you get to the end of the day and your mind is like, right, I need to process and like close some of these tabs. I need to get rid of some of these. And so, yeah, if you start to build in that time to create space and to allow your mind to process things and just check in with yourself, you will start to sleep better. Okay, so if you're someone who really struggles with sleep, then start to build this into your day, and I'm positive that you will see a result. Okay. The other thing is that you will start to find it really hard to focus on things. Like I said it before, like you might find you get to the end of the day, you come home and you can't focus on what your kids are saying because you've still got so many tabs open. So you need to create some space somewhere in between being at work and coming home where you can really do that. Or build some space in throughout the day at work where you can really just kind of allow your thoughts to flow, check in with yourself so that you avoid that at the end of the day. If being present with your kids when you come home is important to you, which I'm sure it is. And as I said, it doesn't have to be long. So don't be thinking like, where am I going to get these extra breaks from? It doesn't have to be a long period of time. As I said, it can be 1-2 minutes, but just being really intentional, excuse me, with how you spend that time. So you might find it really hard to focus. And when you find it hard to focus, that's going to create a sense of overwhelm. So a lot of my clients will say that. They'll say that they feel like their mind is just jumping from one thing to the next and they feel very overwhelmed when they start to feel like this, when they've not created space for themselves. The way that I deal with that, and I know I have some other clients that do as well, is I become very irritable. So I will just feel like really sort of like irritated by everything. I'll just be like, oh God, like look at that person, it's so annoying. I'm not proud of this. It's not my proudest moment, but that is my signal that I haven't had enough space for myself. If I'm just really, really irritable in the day, and then I become very reactive rather than responsive, and I can have a bit of a temper sometimes and respond in ways that I'm not proud of when I feel this way. And that's my flag, like, okay, I need to create some space for myself. I've taken on too much. I'm thinking about too much. I need to create some space to just really process everything that I have going on at the moment and get some perspective over these situations. But you might notice that in yourself as well. Like everybody responds slightly differently to this. So I'm just kind of giving you examples of what you might see come up in your own life if this is something that you need to work on. I was asking a couple of friends about this as well, and one of my friends said that this for her is when her anxiety really shows. And I found that interesting because I fortunately don't suffer from anxiety. I did when I was younger, but I don't any longer. But I know that I would say like 90% of my clients have anxiety. And what my friend was saying was, when she doesn't create space for herself in the day, that's when her anxiety really starts to show. Because if you think about it, it makes sense, because anxiety is feeling out of control. That's what anxiety is. And so when you feel like you've got all these tabs open and you just don't really know where to start, then of course you're going to start to feel a little bit out of control of your time, a little bit out of control of what you're doing in your day. And so she said that's when her anxiety starts to show. And when she gets really anxious, she starts to feel really frozen, like she just can't do anything. She doesn't know where to start. So it's like a freeze response. So I thought that was really interesting and wanted to mention that, because I know that for a lot of my clients who do suffer from anxiety, that is one of the main things that they feel improves when they start to create space for themselves. So then, like I say, it makes sense, because when you're feeling out of control, that's obviously perpetuated by feeling like you have so much on. Okay, so as a result of these symptoms of not creating space for yourself, what's going to happen? Well, the biggest thing I see is that like your relationships are impacted, especially if you're someone like me whose response to this is to be irritable. It's not the most attractive quality. So with my kids, with my partner, like it does impact my relationships with them. If I'm like reactive and I'm irritable all the time, like I'm not as nice of a person to be around when I feel like that. It's going to be the same if you're like anxious and unable to do things, or unable to focus on what people are saying and overwhelmed. Like that is going to impact your relationships as well. I also think that one of the biggest things I see is that for mums is we start to really lose ourselves when we don't create space for ourselves. And I think when you think about what it is, you're getting in touch with how you feel and what you're thinking. If you go through your days never ever doing that, because you're so busy thinking about all the other things that you have to do and all the other people that you have to look after, then of course you're going to start to feel out of touch with yourself, because you're never really checking in with yourself and what you want and how you feel. So I often hear from women, that have been mothers for a while and they're working as well, and I just don't really know who I am anymore. I don't really know what I enjoy. I feel like I've lost myself a little bit. And a big part of that is you're not creating space for yourself. You don't regularly sit down and be with yourself. So how would you get to know yourself anymore if you're never with yourself, if that makes sense? When you're constantly outside of yourself, your thoughts are constantly on things that are outside of you. You're never really with yourself. You don't want to end up getting to the end of your life and thinking that your life has just been it's just happened to you. Like, you go to work, you don't really like your job that much, it's stressful, you find it hard, you come home, you get dinner ready, you do the bedtime routine, but you're not really present with your kids and enjoying it because you're so exhausted, it feels like a struggle. Then you sit down when they go to bed on the sofa, watch some TV, switch off, maybe have a glass of wine or a snack, and then go to bed. And when you're feeling like all of that is if you do that and you love it and you love what you do at work and you come home and you love spending time with your kids and you're in the moment and you're really enjoying that, amazing. That's a life well spent in my eyes. But if you are going through most of your day feeling like it's unintentional, there's something else you'd rather be doing, you're not really enjoying what you're doing at home or at work, it feels a hassle, it feels strained, then that's a waste. That's a real waste of your life, and it doesn't have to be like that. And when we start to create space for ourselves and we start to get back in touch with what we want and how we feel, we're much more able to just get really intentional with what we're going to do with our life and really intentional about the decisions we're going to make. We're going to make much better decisions when we spend time on this, okay? So it's really, really a crucial first step. 1, to creating more peace of mind and calm, but 2, for just creating an exciting life that really feels good again. So I hope that this episode has been useful, and I hope that it's given you some food for thought and you have some ideas about how you might go and create some space for yourself this week, how you might just check in with yourself in any moment. In the next episode, I'm going to talk all about mine and my clients' favorite ways to make space for ourselves, just to give you some ideas of what you might want to get your teeth into. And in the next episodes after that, I'm going to talk about things that get in the way, what thoughts really sabotage us when we're trying to create space for ourselves and how we can get on top of those, okay? So as always, if you've enjoyed, please like the episode, subscribe, share it with a friend who you might find it useful. Your support is I'm really grateful for it. So thanks for listening. And I will see you on the next episode. Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Chilled Parent Podcast. If you'd like to learn more about me and my work, then come visit me at www.livelongandlush.com. That's live, long, and the full word, lush.com. Or connect with me on my Instagram or Facebook at Jane Hughes Coaching. That's Jane with a Y, Hughes, Hughes. See you next time.